I think we're moving to a world where information will be commoditized, ubiquitous, and omnipresent. What that means is the Ford salesperson will, at his fingertips, always have the right answer and all of the client history to be able to make the perfect pitch. Everyone will have the right answer at their fingertips. What's going to separate high performers from others is how you communicate that information. In some ways, I think AI is going to force us to be even more human if we want to differentiate ourselves from the world. And that's why I'm even more excited about Yoodli.
Hi, I'm Boaz, founder and CEO of Simply Augmented, and I'm excited that you're tuning in to ShiftAI, a show that explores what it takes to thrive and adapt to the changing workplace in the digital age of remote work and AI. In today's episode, I'm thrilled to have Varun Puri as our guest. Varun is the co-founder and CEO of Yoodli, a new AI tool that helps you improve your communication skills with private real-time coaching. If you're someone interested in the way that AI is making it easier to improve skills, you are not going to want to miss this episode. We also want to send out a special thank you to CIBC Bank, who is the sponsor of this episode. This episode's going to be amazing. We are super excited to talk to Varun today, and we can't wait to learn more from him. Let's get to it. All right, Varun, thank you so much for being on the ShiftAI podcast. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here. I've heard episodes before, and it is exciting to be one of the guests on this show.
Well, before we get started, I just want to cover a little bit of your background. You're a young man, but you've done a lot of amazing things in your life. You're from India. You worked at Google for many years. I want you to tell us a little bit about that. You worked on the Moonshot project, and now you're the founder and CEO of Yoodli, which is a really, really interesting AI startup based in Seattle. So talk a little bit about your early years and the time at Google.
How early are we talking?
Well, you were a Google intern. You came to Google out of college and did a bunch of work there, but that kind of led to some more special projects at the company. Will you tell the audience a little bit about that background?
For sure. So I studied the liberal arts at Claremont McKenna, which is a small school in LA, and interned at Google my junior year of college. It was one of those super fun big tech internships where you all wear the Googler hats and you have a great time. Right after that, I joined Google full-time in one of the early grad rotational programs. It was called the APMM program. Facebook has a version of this called RPM, etc. Through a very random series of events, I was tapped by Sergey Brin, who's one of the founders of Google. And Sergey was just looking for someone to run special projects for him. For those of you all who are familiar with the show Silicon Valley, he said, I'm looking for my Jared from the show Silicon Valley. So I was not assistant, not chief of staff, but just this dorky fixer trying to do things with Sergey. Super cool role, learned a lot. Lots of really cool exposure that I'm grateful for. Did that for 2 years, then moved over to Google X, where they work on a lot of early stage technology. So self-driving cars, drones, robots, balloon-powered internet, etc. And at X, I was an early employee on a team called Project Tara, where we were using invisible lasers to bring the internet to unconnected places in the world. So I led our Africa operations, and I lived and traveled across East Africa for a better part of the year.
Super interesting, super interesting. And so from there, after the Africa experience, you decided to move to Seattle and start this company. What led to that transition?
So I was doing the Africa stuff. COVID hit. I came back to the US. I've been passionate about this problem forever, which is just so many smart people struggle to communicate with confidence and therefore miss out on opportunities they deserve. Right? I'm talking about a founder who's trying to raise money but doesn't pitch with as much oomph, or an introvert who deserves a McKinsey job but an extrovert ends up, getting it, or a woman who gets talked over in corporate America, or a non-native English speaker, an immigrant who's stuck in mid-management because we never learned public speaking or communication skills growing up. So this is something I've wanted to tackle forever. When I was at Google X, I became a de facto speech coach. I'm by no means the world's best speaker or a coach, but there are a few tricks. Speak in threes, record yourself and watch yourself back. And I think we're at a point where technology can help people with this problem. So The idea behind Yoodli is, can we do to speaking what Grammarly did to writing with real-time analytics, or what Duolingo has done to language learning with bite-sized modules? Be your private real-time judgment-free coach that gives you feedback anytime you're speaking.
Have you always been entrepreneurial? Like when you were growing up, before you moved to this country to study, were your parents entrepreneurs? Were they into technology? What was it like growing up? What was your exposure to tech as a young person?
It's an interesting question. And no, I don't think I was a standard good Indian boy trying to study engineering and playing chess. I didn't do too many entrepreneurial ventures. My parents aren't entrepreneurial. But my parents are very open-minded in that they would keep pushing me to explore new opportunities, be this chess club or skating club, or, at 17, come to the US for college, which for us was a really big deal. I'm just really passionate about this idea. There are lots of different founders out there. There's the founder who's going to exit 5 companies and then sit on 6 boards and knows how to play the game. I don't think I'm that founder. I don't think I'm a serial founder. I just want to be the person to try and make a little bit of a dent in this problem. And maybe it takes us 5 years, maybe it takes us 15, but who knows?
Yeah, tell me more about that. I mean, clearly to leave Google, given the position that you were in, requires some passion around doing a startup like this. And it's not easy. I mean, you raised some money from Madrona, you're working at AI2, so you've got some prominent folks that are backing you, but man, tell me more about that passion. Like, why is that bringing you so much energy? Why are you so fired up about this idea?
I think it's because it's this injustice that I saw firsthand at Google X, especially. I mean, I've seen it across my life, but at X, it was just so visible. There'd be these engineers who would do all of the hard work. They'd do the heavy lifting, but the product manager, me in this case, would go and give the presentation and get the credit and get the promotion. And something just feels off about this. The loudest voices in the room get the most credit. And I think it's because people are insecure. 2 out of 3 people in the world are afraid of public speaking. We never learned a lot of this growing up. And if we can give people across the world a voice or just a private coach, think about this as your friend or your spouse who pokes you under the table at Thanksgiving saying, Boaz, your joke's not landing, stop. Or if I'm in a board meeting and my co-founder Isha just punches me under the table when Madrona's asking me some revenue question that I'm bombing. That's the idea behind this. Imagine if everyone could have that buddy with them, just helping them communicate with a little bit more confidence.
And now, before we go further into the interview, I want to take a minute to talk about one of our show's sponsors, CIBC, and their new podcast, CIBC Innovation Banking. As we all know, it's hard to get funding in unpredictable markets, and that's why it's more important than ever to work with trusted partners who have connections beyond cash. On the new season of the CIBC Innovation Banking podcast, experienced venture capitalists and entrepreneurs share the surprising trends they see driving growth in the innovation economy and tips to obtain funding. Because when it comes to securing funding, people matter more than projections. Whether you're seed stage or late stage, CIBC Innovation Banking helps entrepreneurs and investors grow startups into market leaders. Discover the CIBC Innovation Banking podcast and learn from the innovators of today, the market leaders of tomorrow, and those who fund them. Tune in on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Now back to the episode. What's so interesting about it is I've spoken with a bunch of people that are in the educational space, and they are thinking a lot about assistance for underprivileged kids and for kids in general that allow them to ask questions that they're too embarrassed to ask in front of everybody in the classroom. And to have that assistant at all times is really, really powerful. I find myself doing that too. There's some financial things that I don't know about and I don't want to ask, but I use ChatGPT or some other AI tool to answer those questions for me, and I can do it on the spot and it unblocks me. You're thinking about that too, but this is for something that's even more vulnerable to people, which is speaking in front of others. And talk a little bit about the tool so that we can visualize and the audience can visualize what to expect when using Yoodli.
Yep. Yoodli is essentially your personalized coach. So for instance, I'm on this podcast with you, Boaz. I'm obviously very conscious of the way I'm sounding. I'm using Yoodli. It's completely private. It's only taking my voice. You don't know I'm using it. And it's nudging me saying, Varun, you've been talking for 40% of the conversation. You typically talk pretty quickly, but right now your pacing is good. You haven't used any biased language. And Yoodli will nudge me if I say something silly. And then if I want to practice for a conversation or a speech or an interview, typically I would go and practice in front of Zoom. Oh, there we go. Yoodli's now telling me I've upped my speed, so I should slow down. Or I would practice in front of a mirror or a camera or a stopwatch. You can now go to Yoodli, which is at www.yoodli.ai, practice any presentation. Let's call it my investor pitch. Yoodli will then ask you follow-up questions the same way an investor would, and will give you a report on how you did. Varun, here's where you rambled. Here's how you could be more concise. Here are the core points your audience took away. Here's feedback on your gesture, posture, tone, body language, etc. Yoodli just nudged me that my current monologue went over 1 minute, so I should stop.
So what are you hearing out there? You've got some early customers that are excited about what you're doing. What's been the responses out there in the world?
It's been overwhelming in a really positive way. I think it's because this is such a visceral problem. For instance, when we raised a seed round, my pitch was I would go to VCs and say, hey, here's your speech, and here's what you actually sound like. Nobody will have the guts to tell you. And everyone relates to this, right? Everybody knows 10 people who are struggling with this problem real time. So on the consumer front, it's been awesome. We have people using Yoodli across many of the world's top business schools for interview prep. We have thousands of ESL folks using Yoodli to just practice their English. Toastmasters International, which is one of the world's leading public speaking coaching companies, is rolling out Yoodli to millions of members and alumni. And Korn Ferry, which works with over 96% of the S&P, is rolling out Yoodli as their AI communication coach to all of their clients worldwide. So it's exciting to see this blend of consumers and enterprises and sales teams and learning professionals, all the way to someone who's trying to land their first job, have the same problem and use the same product.
So what keeps you up at night, Varun? I mean, you kind of shared with me that you have some imposter syndrome like the rest of us in the entrepreneurial space, so you're definitely not alone. But what are the things that make you pause and give you concern?
So many things. I won't give you the full laundry list, but I'll give you a couple. The first is we are creating a new category, right? There isn't an AI speech coach out there. Nobody says, I'm a bad speaker. Let me go talk to my AI speech coach. So we need to make people aware of the problem, show them the value of Yoodli, get them to use Yoodli, even though Yoodli might say some things that they don't like, and get them to use it again. So we're creating a category while trying to facilitate behavior change on a deep-rooted human insecurity. That is wicked hard, right? Today's alternative is avoidance. It's 2 out of 3 people say public speaking is their biggest fear, sometimes bigger than the fear of death. How do we create a paradigm shift around that? So behavior change is really hard. The second piece of it is, look, public speaking or communicating in high pressure environments is by its nature a sporadic event. From a business standpoint, how do you create an ecosystem where people have a hair on fire presentation once a quarter or an interview once every 2 years? It's a very palpable problem, but it's not that regular, which makes it a hard SaaS play. And obviously there are ways around this, but those are the kinds of foundational things that we are trying to battle. And we probably will be forever. Like, this problem has existed for as long as humans have been around.
Do you think about it differently than some of these companies that are recording meetings on Zoom? I mean, you really think about, if I'm preparing for a TED Talk, or if I'm going to get ready to go into a high pressure negotiating situation or whatever, I might use Yoodli. But are you thinking about it in other ways too that happen more often for individuals?
Yes. And I'll give you 2 sides to that. The first is there are lots of companies that are creating these bots that will join your call and take notes and maybe integrate with your HubSpot or your CRM, etc. Yoodli is not that. Our user is insecure. I am a founder in a VC pitch. Nobody in the world should know that I'm asking for help. We cannot have a bot join the call and spotlight my insecurity. So we're definitely staying clear of the first place. What we are doing is we've built Yoodli as that same bot, but completely in private. So I have calls, 15 calls a day. Yoodli integrates with my calendar, joins my calls, such as this one, and gives me real-time feedback on, Varun, remember to hit talking point number 2, or crack a joke about your time in Africa, or, as I'm speaking right now, my number of monologues has gone up to 7 and my talk time is now at 47%. And the idea here is anytime I'm speaking, I could be getting coached. And I take inspiration from my Apple Watch, right? My Apple Watch says, Varun, it's okay. If you don't go to the gym, you're still an athlete. Anytime you're walking, you can get statistics. And the way we are trying to counter behavior change of people not wanting to practice is, listen, when you're speaking, you're essentially practicing. And then Yoodli at the end of the day, end of the week, will give me a report. Varun, you had 5 calls this week. You interrupted women more than men. Or you completely bombed your Boaz call, but you crushed the Madrona call. Well done. And it's like my exec coach that's on my shoulder at all times.
And now, before we dive deeper, I want to take a quick moment and tell you a little bit about one of our podcast partners. As a listener of this show, I know you're trying to stay on top of all things AI and tech, which is why you have to check out the amazing GeekWire podcast, produced by GeekWire and hosted by Todd Bishop. It's a treasure of insights featuring industry leaders and the latest tech trends that are shaping our world, and the perfect companion podcast to ShiftAI. GeekWire Podcast is where technology meets curiosity and covers the world of technology, startups, and geek culture. Expand your tech horizons and join the conversation. Tune into the GeekWire Podcast today, a perfect complement to our own discussions here. Don't miss out. Follow the GeekWire Podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or your favorite listening app. Now back to the episode. How about now, your English is very good, but you touched on this at the beginning. There's a lot of folks that struggle with English. And one of the things that I'm most impressed about AI is its ability to translate. I've been looking at a lot of tools recently, and I'm just blown away by how quickly in real time the translations can happen. When you talk to folks out there that are practicing their English and trying to deliver on speeches in their non-native language, what are you hearing? And how do you think about that in the future?
So first off, Yoodli is not an English learning tool. Yoodli is a tool for folks who are working on their speaking skills. Our bullseye target user is, I'm a non-native English speaker. I grew up in, let's say, China. I did my undergrad there. I came here for my master's, and now I just got my first job, and I'm slightly insecure. I'm conscious of my accent. I feel like people don't fully understand me. But I don't want anyone to know I'm working on this. For them, Yoodli is a bullseye tool, both for preparation, but also during their calls, because they can get ongoing coaching.
I'm getting ready to go give a presentation, and would Yoodli be something that I would use as a practice tool before that presentation, where I would just go in front, record myself? I'm not on a kind of live call, but it could coach me along the way.
That's one of our target use cases. Right, I'm an exec. I have an upcoming presentation. I practice in front of Yoodli. Yoodli will give me some quick feedback. I'm like, okay, this is good to know. Let me practice again and I'll get better. So that's one flow. Definitely, you should give it a spin. And if we disappoint you, we're doing something wrong. Like, we should be smashing that use case. And then the second one is, I already have some speeches that I've done. Like, Oren was on your show a couple of weeks ago. Oren might come and upload one of his speeches and get the kind of feedback that people may not otherwise give him.
Makes a lot of sense. Tell me a little bit about what you think in regards to the AI startup ecosystem. You're a player here in the Seattle space. There's a lot of companies that were created last year, including you've been around for 2 years, but there's a lot of companies that have been around for a year, that raising a lot of money, valued at huge valuations. What's your sense of the environment right now? Where are we at? What can we look forward to in 2024? More general, not so Yoodli specific.
Yeah, I'm certainly not an expert. I've only been doing this for 2 years, but I can give you my take. I think there are parts of existing workflows that have been completely commoditized. For instance, note-taking or summarization will likely be part of every platform in some capacity. The second is, I don't think AI is going to replace human jobs completely, but AI, when paired with a human coach, will likely replace another human coach. So in the Yoodli example, I don't think AI is going to be able to give you feedback on the nuance of your communication. That's way too human. But when we have human coaches using Yoodli as part of their workflow, they can now coach hundreds more clients, right? My pitch to speech coaches is, If you're the doctor, we are the medical report. If you're the accountant, we are TurboTax. Let's help you supercharge the work you're doing. And I think companies leveraging AI with that humility, but also partnership with human coaches will likely find the most value. And the third piece of it is there's so much unknown. I think, I wouldn't say we got lucky, but we had been working on Yoodli and then the GPT revolution came around, which really helped us out. But how do startups keep themselves nimble in order to very quickly pivot when the next breakthrough comes out? And that's something we are thinking about a lot. Like, it's possible that tomorrow Yoodli is able to give you feedback that I didn't even think about last year. And that's happening every day.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. I love that you guys are so human-centered. I mean, really the purpose of this is to help humans in their ability to communicate. And so I know a lot of people that I talk to are fearful about AI. The minute you bring up AI, the question they ask is, will it take my job? There's a lot of fear out there right now. But I love that you guys are thinking about humans first and humans in the loop. Who are some of the humans in your life that have really impacted you? I mean, you mentioned Sergey. I'm sure he had an effect on you as a young person, but who are some of your mentors that really had an impact on you?
The most basic answer is my parents. I can go through my corporate mentors in a second, but I grew up with my mom. One of the things my mom often tells me when I'm working on Yoodli is, there are days I call her and I'm like, Mom, this is not going anywhere. What am I doing? I left a cushy Google job. All I'm doing is working. My dreams are not coming true. And my mom stops me and says, it's not your dream, it's our dream, right? Like, you're being able to, I'm living vicariously through you. And that's very much her philosophy in giving me the ability to ensure that my dreams and goals are not just about myself, it's about my community and where I grew up. And I hope that I can spread that attitude with my team, with my, when I have kids at some point, etc. My dad, like, the one person I wanted to be like at all times is my dad. I keep joking, he's a better, more mature, a more successful, calmer, zenner version of me. And when things go bad after a board meeting, I don't call my exec coach or anyone, I call my dad. If I've gotten an accomplishment, the first person I want to call is my dad to see if he's like, okay, good job, or that was just schmoozy. And I think that's the case for most people. Also for me as an immigrant, being so far away from home, especially as an immigrant who came here early on in life, it's the late 20s identity crisis of, am I American, am I Indian, but I've been here for so long. Having my parents with me or being able to talk to them often is really grounding. When I was at Google, a couple people were Dave Shapiro. Dave ran a large part of marketing for Google. Just a solid person. During my internship, he would give me feedback point blank. Anytime I'm low, he, even today, somehow has this spidey sense where he calls me, and he just made me believe that he always had my back. I try to do the same thing with my team. There are many more folks.
I'd love to, a lot of people say that their parents were an influence on them, but, very, very few people your age are on the show, and to hear, that kind of connection with family is heartening. And I understand how hard it is to be a founder, and it helps to have that kind of support. So as you think about the future and maybe 5 years down the road, knowing what you know about the technology that you've done research on at Google and the kind of work that you've been doing now in the AI space, what are some of those things that are out there quite a ways that get you excited? And how do you think about the future of work in that respect? Like, within that context, what is work going to look like for us in 5 years from your perspective?
I'll give you the broad answer, and then I'll tell you how we're thinking about it from a Yoodli standpoint. I think we're moving to a world where information will be commoditized, ubiquitous, and omnipresent. What that means is the Ford salesperson will, at his fingertips, always have the right answer and all of the client history to be able to make the perfect pitch. The kid applying for a McKinsey job will immediately be able to tell you how many ping pong balls fit in a Boeing 747 because his smart glasses have somehow processed it and talked to OpenAI or whatever version we are using then, and be able to give you the right answer. Everyone will have the right answer at their fingertips. What's going to separate high performers from others is how you communicate that information. In some ways, I think AI is going to force us to be even more human if we want to differentiate ourselves from the world. And that's why I'm even more excited about Yoodli, right? I think there will still be wars and there'll be chaos. It's because we don't communicate with one another. The two things we are doing in this way, I hope to do is, how do we get Yoodli by your side anytime you're speaking? So Yoodli's on my watch, I'm on a date, and Yoodli should just be pinging me saying, Varun, shut up, stop talking about yourself, ask her questions. It's totally private. She doesn't know I'm using it. It's only taking my voice. It's unique to me. Like, I know a lot of people, my friends included, who would pay a lot of money for that. The second piece of it is today Yoodli coaches me on what I could have done better for a certain speech. But very soon, Yoodli will be able to give that speech in my voice. So it's like, Varun, here's what your investor pitch looks like. Click a button to watch yourself give the hero version of this speech. We're not trying to build robots. I don't want the AI to take that speech and send it to investors, but how do we help you train to be the best version of yourself? That's really powerful.
Yeah, and to be able to A/B test against the AI version of yourself giving a hero speech and your ability to actually execute on that could be very, very powerful. So as you know, at the end of this show, I always ask the same question. In 2 words only, how would you describe the future of work? And then you can elaborate on those 2 words.
The 2 that come to my mind are audacious humanity. I say audacious because the world, the way we know it, is about to 10x, 100x at a pace that I don't think many of us can even think of. I say humanity because I think that's what's going to separate us from everyone and everything else. When machines are all around us, what's going to separate a high performer from someone who's not a high performer, to people who are able to win elections and raise money and land dates, is how you communicate your ideas, not in a way that reduces filler words or has some robotic take to it, but can you do it with authenticity and humanity? And I think that's what AI is going to enable.
I love that approach. I really hope that you're right. I think that high EQ and the ability to communicate with others may be one of the only things that humans can do better than machines in the future. And I certainly have been impressed talking to you, and I'm really, really excited about your journey and the power of Yoodli to change people's lives. And so I really appreciate having you on the show. It was wonderful talking with you.
Listen, it's such a pleasure. Thank you for having me here. And I'm a founder, so I'd be remiss if I didn't make a plug. Yoodli is free of cost. Sign up at yoodli.ai and let us know what you think. If it sucks, give us feedback. If you love it, let us know why, and we'll feel better about ourselves.
How can people reach you out there? Are you on social channels that people can reach out to you directly? And are you hiring right now for folks that would be excited about getting involved in Yoodli?
Yep. So we're hiring for a bunch of roles: full stack engineering, account execs on the sales side, platform devs. So please go to our website and check out our careers page. I can be reached at info@yoodli.ai, as well as our Slack community, which is at yoodli.ai/community. You'll meet me, our team, and hundreds of thousands of folks who are using the platform today.
Well, if you're excited about the vision that Varun has laid out for Yoodli and you want to reach out, you should definitely do that. Thank you again for being on the ShiftAI podcast, and we're definitely keep track of what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
That's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Such a pleasure to have Varun as our guest on today's episode. Varun's passion for helping people improve their communication skills really came through as he talked about his AI startup journey. If you want to learn more about Varun, you can find him on LinkedIn and Twitter. If you're interested in how he thinks about AI and communication, definitely connect with him and keep up with his posts and activities online. I continue to be amazed by the guests we've had on the show, and I'm excited about the ones joining us in the near future. I truly, truly appreciate you spending your time with us. Thank you for listening to this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to the ShiftAI podcast for more exciting interviews, and to the Simply AI weekly newsletter for updates on how AI can help you scale your business. The ShiftAI podcast is presented by Simply Augmented and syndicated by GeekWire. We are super grateful to have the show sponsored by CIBC Bank. Our theme music was created by Dave Angel.